Hi, my name is Khush Monga. I am here with a settlement agent, Kristy from Platinum Settlements. What are the stamp duty rates for the permanent residents or citizens who are buying properties?
That's based on a sliding scale of the purchase price, so it's all different rates.
Okay, so it's not like one.
No, every dollar it goes up, the stamp duty.
But is there like a percentage that applies, like 4% to all properties?
There's a sliding scale of percent, like for the first 100 it's this percent, but because of these days calculators and that, you put in the figure and and plus things change all the time, so I always find it best if you just use a current calculator, especially from the Revenue WA site, because it will have things, when was the contract signed and all that, because they apply different rates.
So the next topic that we are going to ask the questions about is a double stamp duty, because that's has been a lot of scenarios where people, if the offer and acceptance is not been done properly, there are people who are facing double stamp duty. So what are the different scenarios you could think of where people may end up paying a double stamp duty?
Okay, so firstly, what we usually recommend is, if you are buying property, do your due diligence up front, especially with whoever's going to be buying the property. It's mainly more important, especially if you're buying investment properties, because there's all different tax implications depending on who you're buying, what name you're buying in, how you're buying it, and quite often we'll get people just putting their name on it, and then there's like, oh no, we want to buy it in a trust, or we want to do this, and the Office of State Revenue actually sees it as a second purchase. Basically. So there's all different scenarios. Sometimes you may want to add a person onto the contract. So first you've got it in your name, and then you decide you want to add your partner, or you want to buy it with a friend, or whatever the case may be. Or you may want to remove someone from the contract, that you no longer want to buy it in two names, just one. Or there could be that, like I said before, you want to now buy it in as a trust or through a super fund. But it's very important to get that information up front, so we avoid double stamp duty potentially.
Correct. So what happens when a buyer wants to change their name on the contract?
So depending on the circumstance, there could potentially be the double stamp duty, or in certain circumstances there are exemptions. So they are what we call a substitute purchaser, is technically what we're doing. And then there's exemptions for, like, if you're adding your spouse or de facto partner, a parent or grandparent, a child or a grandchild of the original purchaser, or a sibling of the purchaser. Those sort of qualifying relationships is what we call those.
Like a blood relation, maybe.
Like I said,
qualifying relations.
A qualifying relationship. And then there would be no additional stamp duty. You can actually do that. And that applies, like, if you've had both and now one wants to come off, so you're technically giving your share to the original person. As long as there is a qualifying relationship, and we're talking about individuals, then there is no double stamp duty. So, which is great. But always, before you're changing, I always recommend getting advice from your settlement agent or someone.
And those changes has to be done prior to the settlement being done. If the settlement is done, then you can't. Then
that's right. Yes, it's definitely prior to. So basically, what you're doing is all your documents are going to be in the original person's name, but the actual transfer of land, which is the transferring it from the seller to the buyer, will have those new people's name on it. So yes, it all happens at settlement. And what that substitute purchaser is for is so we can provide that to the Office of State Revenue to confirm that's why we're not charging any additional duty. And it's qualifying, we've got a form filled out, and then we just travel as normal. But yes, you can't do it afterwards, and there's a whole different scenario, and they are considered that you're selling it to someone.
That the portion is being sold. Okay, so what are the reasons, and what should buyer consider?
So firstly, if you are wanting to change, get advice, because depending on what change you're making, we can advise you on what the potential consequences of those are, such as the double stamp duty. Or we can advise you, in this instance there are no, what is your relationship to that person. We can give you all that sort of advice.
And that's, you said, it's a substitution form that we fill?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So, like I said, and in some cases we've had people that, it's beneficial still for their financial situation to even pay that double stamp duty, because there could be definitely some financial implications down the track for investing in that it actually benefits them still to change it, and regardless of this double stamp duty, that they'll still do it, because it's going to be better off for them in the long run. But yes, if you can get advice from your accountant and all those people before you're actually entering into a contract, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So if it's if it's under an individual name, it is easy to change names as long as it's a qualifying relationship by doing a substitution form, and before the settlement actually takes place. And if any questions, just check with your accountant or settlement agent. However, if it's under a company and trust name, is it still that easy, or superannuation name?
Okay, so to do a trust, in some circumstances you can do a trust. You can't do a discretionary trust, which is quite often the ones that people want to change, and there is double stamp duty in those sort of circumstances. And that's mainly because in a discretionary trust, the people who are entitled to the benefit of those trusts can change. So that's why you can't typically do it, because one minute it could be a qualifying relationship, and then later on it's changed, so it's like it always changes. So there's only certain ones that you can do. So if you were doing a trust that's not a discretionary trust, as long as the beneficiary is an individual that's related to the purchaser. So whoever's entitled to the benefit of that property, if they're related to the purchaser, then you can do it as a substitute purchaser.
I had this a long back when I sold this property, and there were 4 people. They put it under their company and superannuation, and then later they wanted to change it to the individual. And they bought it under their individual name, 4 individual names, and they wanted to change it to the company and superannuation. They had to do the double stamp duty, even the settlement didn't take place, because there were 2 sisters, qualifying relationship, husband, qualifying relationship, but the 2 husbands, there is no qualifying relationship. So they actually, and it was like 2 weeks of back and forth, confirm the name, decide the name before you actually put the offer through. And they had their chat with their accountants and everything, and they said, yes, this is the names we want to buy the property. And once the offer was written and accepted by the seller, 2 weeks later they come back and say now they want to put it on their trust and their superannuation. And I had to make calls to the revenue office and everything to try and see if there is any way we can avoid paying the double stamp duty, but we couldn't because the 2 brother-in-laws were in the contract.
Yes, that's why, it's very important to get it up front, because there's so many different scenarios and so many intricacies that can change a situation, that it's always best if you know up front. Is always obviously the best policy. It can't always happen, which is why they do have the substitute purchaser.
So under this scenario, even though we were changing from individuals to the superannuation, if it was 4 individual names and they wanted to remove one, would that qualifying relationship still apply, or can we do it using the substitution?
That's quite a complicated one. I don't know that off the top of my head. That's why a lot of these scenarios, you can't, there is no set standard. You always have to look at it at the time. Look at what the current rules are. Sometimes rules change as well. So I always like to not have, this is what can occur. It's always on an individual case basis, and then look at what's currently happening and make sure, because they're all different scenarios. Like, we say qualifying relationship, but then that's a different scenario again. It's like, So sometimes if it's 4 individuals and you're wanting to take one person off, then it depends on, do they have a qualifying relationship with everyone? And sometimes depending on what portion you're taking, there's all different variations of what, and maybe there will be some stamp duty because this person wasn't related to you, but this person was.
Yeah.
So they're very more complex situations, and quite often you might even have to lodge them with the Revenue Office.
Yeah.
Explain your case, and then they will sort of tell you this is what.
So it is so important to consult the settlement agents if you have any questions, so they can make their calls before making a decision of writing an offer.
And that's the other reason why we say also having people that are state-based.
Yeah.
Because you can get a finance broker that deals with these sorts of properties all the time in the eastern states.
Yes.
And their rules are very different for names on contracts, and it seems to be a lot easier to actually change them. Whereas here, they go, oh yeah, we just do this. And we're like, we can't actually do that here.
Yes.
It will be a case of double stamp duty.
Correct.
So that's why I find it important to have all state-based people, because they know the rules and they deal with it every day.
Yeah.
Same with an accountant. Not all accountants are going to be experienced in trusts.
Yes.
So find someone that's experienced in that sort of scenario.
Yeah.